In Warhammer the Old World, the holiday of Easter is a cause of dread and celebration. For those with little concern for their own life, or perhaps more accurately, the lives of others, it's a celebration of wonderful gifts. For those with, dare I say, a brain, they know this holiday is anything but wonderful. For the only gift the Easter Bunny truly wants to bestow upon the old world is death and disease. So, if around this time you see a shadowy figure hopping across the fields, or the smell of foul eggs, I would advise you to run and never look back. For these are the sure signs that the terror of spring has arrived. And indeed he has for today's Warhammer The Old World Battle Report. We have the forces of Bretonnia facing off against the Warriors of Chaos. The armies are both 1250 points and relying on a heavy use of magic to carry their forces to victory. Additionally, the Chaos army is slim on numbers, but highly elite and all blessed by the god Tzeentch. The Bretonnians are also counting on an alliance with Dwarven Conrads and a large force of peasants to bolster their numbers for a victory. It seems none of their mounted cavalry was able to make it for this battle. I already previewed the rules for this scenario in my prior hobby chat video, so I won't spend too long going over them here. But to give a quick synopsis, there's an Easter Bunny with a pretty scary stat line in the middle of the battlefield. He will scatter move a random direction at the start of each player's turn. This bunny is pretty difficult to pin down in a combat and kill, and each time he moves to a new location or flees a combat, he drops an egg. Players can choose to pick up one of these eggs with a character, or you can choose to open it and see what kind of item you get inside of it. You get a victory point for each of the eggs collected, not opened, and for each wound you cause to the rabbit. Additionally, you get any other standard victory points you would get for a game of Warhammer, such as killing the enemy general or capturing banners. The following are the spells rolled for the Bretonnians. They had a level 4 prophetess, and then these are the Chaos players' spells. These first set are for the level 4 sorcerer that they had, and then this next set is for their level 2 sorcerer. It should be noted that both of these sorcerers had units that were large enough that, in junction with the blessing of Tzeentch, essentially gave them an extra level when it came to casting their spells. So he basically had a level 5 sorcerer and a level 3 sorcerer when it came to actually trying to get the abilities of the spells off. So the starting deployment has the Bretonnians focusing all of their range and their main melee line in the center of the board. And from the looks of things, the Chaos players planning to charge straight into that line as quick as possible. A few of the range units are offset to the side to get more clear shots on the incoming carnage. And the Bretonnian player also set their Slayer allies near the back side of the chapel, perhaps trying to do a flank maneuver. The Chaos players sort of responded to this by putting the spawn on the same flank, although I kind of have my doubts that that spawn would do much against that many Slayers. The Bretonnians wanted to pray before the battle, so the first turn will go to the forces of Chaos. But before turn 1, we roll for the bunny, and he starts hopping right towards the Bretonnian lines. I think we rolled a 4 for that. The Chaos player responds with moving all his troops up as quick as possible towards the main Bretonnian line, and maybe trap the rabbit in there. Additionally, the Warriors of Chaos are nicely positioned behind a fence and getting ready for the imminent Bretonnian range salvo. You can see in the picture there. Spell-wise, the Chaos player buffs are mostly limited to 1 turn of duration, and seeing how neither side was likely to make contact, there wasn't much point in casting them and potentially getting a miscast. A magic missile was attempted, but it was a low roll from the Tzeentch player, and the Bretonnians shut it down. During the Bretonnians' turn, the rabbit begins shifting towards the chapel, but a charge still seemed possible from the Foot Knights. So indeed, a very bold charge is attempted. With the Foot Knights, we measured it out. It was a max distance for them, which I believe is 10 inches. And sadly for them, a 9 is rolled, 1 inch shy of what they needed. The peasants move up to kind of support the failed charge, the flank of the Foot Knights. And the Slayers also move up as much as possible around the backside of the chapel. It should be noted, because I think we were both a little bit too eager to actually get this game going, that we missed taking a photo or two of everything here. There were 2 egg tokens, I believe, laid out a little bit closer to the Chaos Warrior side, but I think the Bretonnian player picked up one of them after a failed charge, and the Warriors of Chaos player will pick one up during the following turn, or in between all the carnage that's about to unfold in the center of the board. When the Bretonnian shooting and magic begins, a tragedy occurs, and the cannon suffers a turn 1 misfire. The Bretonnian player focused the fire of the trebuchet, handguns, and bowmen on those Warriors of Chaos positioned behind the fence, and they managed to pick off a few of them. The Prophetess inside of the Foot Knight unit casted a Pillar of Fire, which managed to kill a Chaos Knight. But do not worry, that Pillar of Fire is far from being finished. It's not until next turn, when it moves, that it truly devastates the battlefield. Additionally, the Bretonnian player got their buff spell, Oaken Shield, on the Foot Knights, giving them the Lady Ward save, the Blessing of the Lady. They have their standard, I think, 5+ armor save, 4+ if they're using their shields, and now they have a 5+ regen save as well. Other than that, turn 1 concludes, and the bunny continues its hop the same direction, now going past the chapel and towards the Slayers and that Chaos spawn. I believe it was on the start of this turn, the Chaos player rolls a +1 attack on their Blessing chart for their Sorcerer Lord there. And I also just want to note they have passed all the stupidity tests on the spawn so far. Additionally, the spawn will roll double 6s for its movement this turn and do a cheeky flank charge on my Slayers. However, we realized a new make way rule during this situation allows the Slayer hero to move right next to his comrade in arms. With both being able to fight with full attacks, I have my doubts that that spawn will be lasting too long in combat. The Chosen Knights charge into the Foot Knights after taking 3 more wounds from the Pillar of Fire and losing almost their entire back rank. The Warriors, I believe, attempt to charge as well on the Man-at-Arms, but only go about 7 inches, I want to say. Some Chaos spells are cast this turn. The Foot Knights are cursed by the Sorcerer Lord with a Gathering Darkness. Then Demonic Vessel is cast on the Wizard in their unit. Everything else failed to go off or was dispelled this turn. The combat was exciting, though. Somehow only 4 Foot Knights were slain, but I think no wounds were dealt to the Chaos player, maybe 1, can't quite remember. You might be asking, Cam, how did 15 or more chosen attacks only kill 4 Foot Knights? You know, plus the extra 4 or 5 from the Sorcerer Lord and his Demonic Mount, and he's also got a pretty nice magic sword. Well, my lovely viewer, when the Lady of the Lake blesses you with ward saves like the ones you're seeing on the screen right now, you shouldn't be surprised. Despite the lack of overall bloodshed, the Foot Knights do fall back a bit, and I think the Chosen pursued but got caught up on the nearby peasant unit because they were just a little too wide, leaving them open to a countercharge from the Foot Knights because the Bretonnian turn's coming up now. Still an easily winnable combat for the Chaos, especially since they still count as charging, I believe. But the Furious Charge bonus that the Foot Knights are about to get is going to be very helpful for round 2 against those Chosen. I should have also mentioned it, the Foot Knights have been using great weapons in close combat, and the Chosen Knights are using lances and shields. The Chaos spawn rolled 1 attack, then rolled a 1 to hit, and also, a bit of a spoiler, but later he's going to roll 1 on his stomp and a 1 to wound with it. That's a lot of 1s. The Slayers didn't kill it, obviously, but they did deal 2 wounds. They didn't even bother repositioning their men because the Easter Bunny was on the way, and the Slayers figured having a wider charge arc, or area of operation, kinda, for the rabbit to get caught in would be beneficial. Speaking of which, the rabbit hops right next to the combat on a hill and plops an egg. The Foot Knights charge into the Chosen, and the Treb takes a shot at the Warriors of Chaos that still aren't in combat, but it managed to scatter into one of the chosen knights. I think it wasn't a direct hit, and it only scratched their armor. The handguns and the bowmen take a good volley at the warriors again this turn. I think by the time they close into combat, they will be near half their numbers. Magic is almost all shut down this turn, though, for the Bretonnians, and their Vortex spell was dispelled by the Chaos player, I believe, during their turn. Despite being so outnumbered and not having their buff spell anymore, the Chosen deal a savage blow this round, killing, I think, 4 or so man-at-arms, and then 3 to 4 foot knights. But their losses were severe this turn, and I believe 3 chosen knights are killed during the retaliating blows. After the combat is all done, both the Bretonnian units are forced to back up their line. The Chaos player decides to hold, because I believe they don't do the result that gives you the charge bonus. They only give like 2 inches of ground. So the Chaos player decides to hold and prepare for a charge with the warriors on their coming turn. The Chaos spawn, to add insult to its already very sad life, rolls another 1 for its attack and a 1 to hit, and does nothing, and is promptly killed by the remaining Slayers. They reform their unit a little bit, facing towards a ton of eggs and a holiday rabbit within charge range. And since it's the end of the turn, the rabbit rolls a dice and bounces over the Slayers, curiously right behind their line. But, as I already mentioned, they're in kind of a wide formation, facing a ton of eggs. This isn't necessarily the worst thing, but I can tell those Slayers are kind of starting to lose their temper over the shenanigans of this rabbit. They want to get it in close combat, and they're tired of this foot-dancing nonsense. The Chaos player charges in with both their units, Chosen on the Foot Knights, and Warriors into the Man-at-Arms. The Sorcerer casts Demonic Familiars and kills 3 of the Foot Knights and continues to curse the unit. At this stage, the Foot Knights have lost a lot of their men, and they're only about 4 or 5 guys strong, and they do still have the Paladin, BSB, and the Prophetess, but the hitting power is not really there, and their ward saves were not really there this turn either. So, not really too surprising. During the combat resolution stage, the unit breaks and is pretty much wiped out by the pursuing Chosen Knights. I believe only 3 of the Chosen Knights are remaining at this stage, and the Sorcerer Lord, obviously. But that's more than enough strength to wipe out the Archer unit that they are now dangerously close to. The Warriors deal heavy damage to the Man-at-Arms, but they only give about a couple inches of ground. Their Shield Wall, the Stubborn Rule, they have like one other one. I think they just have like a really high leadership because of the Sergeant-at-Arms. I can't remember. They've got a few special rules to help them when it comes to like giving ground and stuff here, but I only think those are going to help for so long here because they are definitely losing numbers and in a losing combat situation. And with the Foot Knights gone, there's not really a whole lot to support them right now. So, kind of a dire situation if I do say so. I'm not sure if it happens this turn or on the following turn, but the Sergeant-at-Arms involved in that combat there, he will get a wound through on the Lesser Sorcerer that's in the Chaos Warrior unit. That's old O'Connell still trying to contribute to the fight here. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely not looking great for the Bretonnians. Now, their main unit has been wiped out, but we did both notice there was a very curious cannon shot that had been lined up once the Chosen did their overrun. You could say if this cannonball just happens to do like a perfect shot, it really could change the fate of the game. Something else really interesting happens when the Bretonnian turn begins. The rabbit hops right into the front of the Slayer unit, quite literally into a combat. The Slayers are all too eager to kill the holiday icon, and they steady their axes and ready themselves for the fight. No more magic for the Bretonnians, though, and not much movement either. They might reposition their handguns on this turn, or it might be the following turn. They need to basically shift their line because the Warriors of Chaos have overrun the main Bretonnian battle line and basically passed the handguns at this point. The trebuchet takes a shot at the knights and hilariously rolls a very long scatter on it, and it lands right on a poor peasant archer and crushes him. The handgunners have little effect against the knights this turn, and the cannon rolls a perfect shot. However, because this stupid game for some reason allows armor saves against freaking cannonballs, they only lose one knight. Yes, that's right. The Armor of Chaos is so strong it can withstand a cannonball, not even needing a ward save, just an armor save. What? I'll contain my further comments on this situation until after the battle's concluded. Despite the underwhelming cannonball, the archers get the best volley of their life. And with a good amount of sixes rolled, because it has like that armor bane rule on longbows now, they're actually able to pick off the last two chosen knights, leaving only the Sorcerer Lord. In the close combat phase, the man-at-arms don't get any wounds through, but Old O'Connell does finish off that lesser sorcerer. The warriors, in response, I think they killed 4, maybe 5 of the man-at-arms, and the man-at-arms continue to fall back, now only a few inches from their archers. It seems the Bretonnians are losing quite a lot of ground. The Slayers lose 3 of their men fighting the rabid Rabbit Man, but are able to wound the mythical beast, and are awarded an egg for their efforts. Afterwards, the rabbit hops away 6 inches or so. At the start of the following turn, the rabbit will flee even further. The Slayers seem to have lost their chance at glory, tragically, but they are able to snatch up a few more of those eggs before the game ends and tell a tale of wounding this legendary beast once they go back home. The Sorcerer Lord charges into the archers, and the warriors continue to fight with the man-at-arms. Fairly predictable results on both of these. 6 or so of the archers are killed by the Sorcerer Lord, and the man-at-arms are now nearly all but wiped out, but somehow still holding on to their morale. In the following turn, an absolute tragedy occurs for the Bretonnians. They decide to have the man-at-arms fight first when it comes to like picking the sequences of combats to do, and the man-at-arms are broken. They flee through the archers, and basically what happens is the warriors get another charge off on that archer unit. And this actually allows them to fight again, since the combat hadn't actually occurred yet during this turn. So long story short, the archers are completely slaughtered. Both units of the Chaos player spin around to face the dangerously close Dwarven gun line and prepare to slaughter them. And again, this was the Bretonnian player's turn, so that's pretty bleak. It plays out pretty much as expected on the following turn. I think 2, maybe 3 of the Chaos Warriors are killed in the melee that's about to ensue, but almost all of the Dwarven gun line is nearly wiped out, and the game ends after that. Only ironically leaving the Slayers remaining on the battlefield for the Bretonnian side at the very end here. After the points are tallied, it's a victory for the forces of chaos. So here are some of my post-game thoughts. Chosen Chaos Knights are amazing, but like many knights in Warhammer, they're ultimately a one-wound mini, meaning that it's a really heavy investment that can disappear really quickly. The Chaos Sorcerers are great melee combatants, but the level 2 one that was taken was pretty much shut down the whole game. Might have been better off taking actual champion character and having them run solo and trying to grab some of those egg objectives. Or just in the unit, contributing a bit more to the close combat overall. The Bretonnians had the magic to hold their line, I think, this game. Specifically with that Oaken Shield spell, the one turn that it went off, like, they barely lost any men. But it just wasn't able to be casted when it was needed most. Also, that Pillar of Fire spell was cast a few more times during this battle. I really think the Bretonnians could have actually dominated the middle confrontation that was occurring there. The Slayers might have been better off ignoring the objectives, and I feel kind of bad saying that because at the time I thought it was a good play and everything, but Yeah, they might have been better off doing that and running as fast as possible towards the main battle line and helping the Foot Knights. Maybe even just deploying on the opposite table side that they did, where like the handgunners were. And then they could have went in and helped the men-at-arms and then support the Foot Knights, vice versa. Whatever side they're on, I think they need to go in, support that unit. And both of the mainline units that the Bretonnians had, the men-at-arms and the Foot Knights, as we saw, were able to hold for multiple rounds of combat. So I think they could have done it long enough for the Slayers to get into position and support them. Especially with the Chaos player being so few on actual, like, units here, I felt like it would have been pretty easy for them to, like, get into position unimposed. And on the note of the Slayers, we forgot that they now have a new Vanguard rule. At least the characters have it, and that might have helped them get better positioning during the game. But it was a small thing. I don't think it would have made a huge impact, but it is worth mentioning that we did forget to do that. This one is a little bit critical, and if you disagree with me, perfectly fine, but I'm just going to give my pure, unfiltered thoughts here. I don't like the new Eye of the Gods table that all the characters for Chaos roll on. I think it's a really annoying mechanic, having to roll for each character every single turn and keep track of some buffs that last the entire game, some that only last one turn, and I just don't think it's really well designed, and the larger scale the game gets, the worse the mechanic becomes. If you have the time and really want to play Chaos, I would highly recommend making your own kind of like cards to keep track of what buffs your character has and like put them near them to help remember. We basically gave up on it about halfway through the game, only occasionally remembering one of the characters had stupidity and we needed to make a roll for that, and that both of the characters at least had +1 attack. They might have rolled it even more. Like, it's so annoying to keep track of. You need to keep like a little notebook for it. I don't know. I really don't like it. I'm not trying to say go back to the old table where, you know, your character had a chance of turning into a Chaos Spawn or a Demon Prince. I'm just saying what we got now is whack, and it needs to change or have some kind of supplement cards supplied with the future to come Warriors of Chaos book. It just doesn't help either that the way this rule used to work for at least a good portion of the editions, most of the time, was it wouldn't trigger unless your character won a duel. So, like, you would not be rolling for it and having to be keeping track of all these little buffs every single turn. I think it is just a terrible mechanic. I'm sorry. I do not like it at all. I have some mixed feelings towards the new Blessing of Tzeentch. I like that you get the bonus towards casting. The magic resistance is actually kind of cool. There was, I can't remember exactly what spell the Bretonnians had. It wasn't a magic missile, but it was something along those lines. It was actually getting casted on the chosen knights, and the magic resistance gave them the -1 that was just enough to succeed in the dispel. So that moment made me kind of realize, like, oh, maybe it's not that bad. But the fact that you don't get the the ward save bonus that you used to get. So in prior editions, you used to just get a 6-up ward save with the Blessing of Tzeentch that was stackable, basically, with any other ward save you might have. In 8th edition specifically, you could even combine it, I believe, with a parry save, so you'd have like a 5-up ward save, basically. I could be wrong on that. Pretty sure that's how it works. I didn't really play Chaos in 8th edition, but I remember it kind of working along those lines. But in the prior editions before 8th as well, it used to give you bonuses towards your ward save. And I don't know, it's just kind of like one of those core things that was part of the identity of the mark. And I'm kind of sad to see it go. And it was always one of those things that kind of drew me towards Tzeentch. I like all the magic stuff that's always been there with the faction, but I don't know, the compensation for not having the ward save, and it's like, oh, you get flaming magic attacks and the magic resistance, like, I don't like it as much, if I'm being really honest, but it is what it is. I'm just gonna kind of say overall mixed feelings on the new Blessing of Tzeentch. Like some of the stuff, kind of miss that like one of the core features is gone though. And again, this next one, I'm just going to give my unfiltered thoughts here. You can completely disagree with me on it. Totally fine. It's all just my opinion here, folks. But I get that cannons in Warhammer needed a rebalance. But I'm sorry. A cannonball having AP -2 or -3 is so dumb. It's a freaking cannonball. I get that it's a game, and I'm even okay with a ward save or, magic stopping the cannonball. But we're not talking about that. We're just talking about armor. What? It's dumb, and I have no other words for it. I don't care about balance. It is just so insanely illogical, and I think GW should increase the cost of cannons by however many points is fair for them to ignore armor saves. If you are directly hit and wounded by a cannonball, you should not get an armor save. Period. We both felt like this scenario was a lot of fun, and it might have even played better with more points. Having more units to try to snatch up eggs, or just more elements on the battlefield to get involved with would have made it even funner. I figured this actually would have been the opposite. I thought with the kind of stat line and scale of the objective points and stuff, this would be better for the smaller scale that we played here. But no, after playing this, I actually feel the opposite as well. I think this would play great for a 2,000 point game. And if you do happen to try out this scenario, I will say attempting to blitz down that bunny is rather foolish. You are much better off just trying to plan for grabbing all the eggs and securing your objective points that way. And it might be tempting to open them, but me and my opponent were kind of talking about it. And this is another thing. If it was a larger scale game, I think we would have been much more inclined to open them. But at the smaller scale that we were at, it was a little bit less tempting to do so, just because there were even less points on the battlefield, and I feel like that kind of made what you gathered victory point-wise all the more significant. When you have 2,000 points on the battlefield, there's a little bit more to play around with, and you can afford to kind of take those losses a little bit more. Or maybe the better word is gamble, since, I wouldn't call it too much of a loss if you open one of those eggs and you get a Monster Slayer sword and proceed to kill like a Chimera on the following turn. Or even a free Dispel Scroll to shut down a Pillar of Fire. That doesn't sound too bad to me. We also had an interesting situation come up, more so interesting for me as like the designer of this scenario, where we noticed the unit charged, technically did not march, and then happened to be in front of the egg, and I was asked, well, does that count? Can I still pick it up in this situation? It only says if I march, I can't do that. And I thought it was pretty clever. I said, sure, go for it. It's kind of, if I'm being honest, against the spirit of what I had intended for the rule. I had intended, if your guys were sprinting rather fast, they were a little too out of breath to try to snatch up the egg, but I ended up caving on that one. I think you can play it however you want, and if there is a disagreement, just 4-up it. It's a custom scenario at the end of the day, and it's supposed to just be a fun little holiday thing to do. So, just try to keep the atmosphere that way if you can. Anyways, that's going to sum up all of my thoughts on this lovely little Easter holiday battle report in Warhammer the Old World. I do want to mention I'm going to be working on a pretty extensive video soon, and it's a pretty related subject matter, but you could also say it's a little bit different. If you're a Warhammer the Old World fan, I highly encourage you to stick around for this. It's going to be a bit more of a Mordheim-focused video. If you've never heard of the game, it is very similar to Warhammer. It's just set in a smaller skirmish scale. That's my really brief kind of spiel on it. It's one of the best tabletop games I've ever played, though. I love Warhammer Fantasy, but I'm always going back and forth in my mind between, is Warhammer Fantasy the best, or is Mordheim the best? Tough to say, and it's kind of like comparing apples to oranges, I suppose. But this video is pretty extensive. I might not be posting any content for just a little while. I might be able to sneak in another Old World battle report, depending on how my schedule is looking next week. But yeah, just want to let everyone know what's going on. I'm not disappearing or anything like that. I'm actually just going to be working pretty extensively on a involved video that'll be soon to come. So keep your eyes peeled on that. I'll be doing little community posts and stuff, giving updates on the whole thing, and I would love it if you have the time to interact with those, or just let me know your thoughts on this battle report or this Mordheim video that I've got planned for the future in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.